If you found it hard to get 10x productivity gains out of these AI coding tools, you're not alone. Savvy software engineers have been adopting powerful new tools like Cursor, Claude Code, Codex, and others, but they find themselves in these endless loops, fighting against hallucinations, and ultimately seeing that these models are doing everything but what we ask them to do. They wonder why they're not seeing that order of magnitude improvement in productivity. Sound familiar? The models, tools, and other infrastructure are finally getting good enough to enable this level of productivity, but you have to know how to set everything up and how to orchestrate the right framework. And Microsoft just asked me to speak to a group of their elite software engineers that are reinventing the way software engineering is done. In this video, I'm taking you inside my talk at Microsoft, where we're going through the exact orchestration playbook I gave them. The workflows, tools, MCPs, frameworks, and the overall philosophy that we've used to create an orchestration layer that surrounds our coding agents to give them the context and tools and validation steps that they need that has led to the huge productivity gains that we've seen over the past few months especially. By the way, I'm Patrick, a CTO and co-founder of a startup that is dead set on scaling as far as we can with as few people as possible by leveraging productivity gains like the orchestration playbook I'm about to show you. It's been really fun being one of the first startups to have a significant amount of revenue going through a truly AI native app. We launched this about 2 years ago and have since worked with companies like Coca-Cola, Disney, Google, Microsoft, Nike, and many other amazing brands. We've also been heavy users of Claude Code since it came out back in February and have invested a lot of time into our orchestration framework, the MCPs, the context management, and other frameworks and tooling in order to get the absolute best performance out of Claude Code, in addition to Cursor, which we've been using for far longer, and other AI agents. So with that, I'm very excited to show you my talk at Microsoft. And I hope these ideas are just as valuable for you as they've been for us. Enjoy this insider look.
Few of the core workflows that we use across the team here. And then I'll go through some engineering workflows and then give you guys some kind of strategy, some high-level ideas that hopefully are very tactical as to what we've learned, and then a little bit more applied insights as we've been going through this. I'm thinking of our entire team, and especially myself, more and more of orchestrating an environment and creating an environment where these LLMs can run and have the context they need to help, again, not just with engineering and product, but the entire organization over time.
Quick question on the communication. What's Bolt useful for internal communication?
So, okay, excellent question. Our CEO, our CPO are both not engineers. For them, there's a couple amazing use cases with Bolt that helps, and I would classify that in the communication realm. So the first thing is they're able to iterate, to design, to think through product features with the same constraints that I'm thinking through on the engineering side, which maybe doesn't sound like a huge deal in Microsoft's context. I'm doing my best to kind of, I'm at the very polar opposite end of the spectrum with this tiny team. But in our context, it's incredible because it saves me hours of having to, oh, hey, we can't do that, or this we could potentially do, but it's got these other considerations. Allowing somebody to create a Next.js app in React using whatever backend can be a really helpful way to allow them to kind of understand without communicating to me, but in the interface of Bolt, what's possible.
I see. So you're using it for ideation, helping them build interactive prototypes and stuff, just to share ideas and just to communicate with the tech people.
Exactly.
Okay.
So the end result is instead of a Figma doc or some other UI UX schematic, I get actual code that compiles and runs. So that's one big advantage, just to help me not have to advise them, and then also for them to communicate more details through fleshed out CSS, for example, as to what exactly they're looking for. And then the second big thing is being able to build prototypes and to get those in front of our users. And, well, actually, maybe a third one, which is internal tooling. So our CEO, without me even knowing, was prototyped a couple things and was bringing that in front of some of our partners to just get their feedback on, hey, I haven't talked to engineering yet, but here's an idea. Is there any interest there? And that is so much faster and more effective than, we weren't even doing it before, but having a Figma doc, for example, and running that through our customers, for them to have something that just communicates this idea that our CEO has much more tactically. And then the internal team use of that has been really helpful. I'll show a couple screenshots of these, but them being able to basically run with and build internal tooling. So I can think of that as communicating all the workflows that like our operations team, I mean, they know that much better than I do. I'm just, I've tried to have as much context for all parts of the company as possible, but at the end of the day, they're the ones that are interfacing with these systems, understand the constraints, understand what our users or our customers are asking for, and they're able to build internal tooling much more competently than I can, in the sense from like a product perspective. And then I can just go in, refine things from a security and integrating with different APIs that we have perspective. Actually touching on, I think, one of the biggest helps, especially from what I perceive to be this context, which is how do you eliminate the bottlenecks that will come as these code gen tools get better and better and better. And those bottlenecks are around communication, at least in our context. And I've got to think even more so at a larger company than us. So just thinking of how can one person reach in and do a lot more. And also, how can we use these tools to basically have a bunch of meetings or communications or docs or slide decks that just no longer need to happen because the communication loops were so fast and they basically were happening against LLMs instead of meetings or talking with other people. Again, an important part of that is having the right context so that those LLMs actually are interfacing and representing the thought that we'd want to have correctly and not just with whatever their pre-training data is, which can be pretty good, but it's not as powerful, obviously, as like the domain that you're working in.
It's the new version of you're saying this meeting could have been an email. Now you're saying this meeting could have been an LLM conversation.
Yeah, in the future, maybe in 6 months, I'll send Thomas my AI, a version of myself. So I'm just trying to really think outside of the box on ways to do so much more work. You can imagine like weeks worth of research essentially in distilling the best ideas, whether it's from a conference or internal meetings or whatever the case might be, to get really actionable, applied to our situation, ready to go insights. Here's a few other ways that we were able to provide context into that orchestration layer. So the first is Granola. This is synonymous with any voice recording app that's able to basically take transcripts of what's happening and then record a summary. At this conference I was just at the AI Engineer World's Fair down in San Francisco, being able to record all of the meetings I attended, scrape the website for the 224 talks, the descriptions, information about the speakers and company, record the talks, going through all the material that we learned that day, feed all of that into using Granola into deep research, and then Notebook LLM's a helpful tool as well to just basically query all that information or create a podcast based off of it. An incredible workflow to just mine all of that information and get actionable insights, especially when you pair that with your written OKRs or other business objectives. So kind of, again, summarizing a ton of data, taking our own personalized information about the company, our current objectives, current projects we're working on, and allowing the power of GenAI to distill that down into very actionable, and even in our case, in light of our tech stack, libraries that we could be using. Another cool use case are other frameworks. So of course, SWOT analysis, PRDs, like product request docs. That can be a really helpful way to take a bunch of information, ask whatever model you guys are using, and to filter it through a framework, again, applied to your situation. So corpus of data, framework that you want to use to help shape up and get the model to think in the process and the reason through the information in a structured way. For example, like a SWOT analysis, where you have 4 quadrants to split out actionable information, and then applying that to your specific situation. Those 3 pillars have been super helpful. For product and market research, using deep research tools to understand industries, competitors, customers, and even one cool experiment has been getting 2 models to talk to each other just through a very, very simple use of the API to basically have one pretend to be an principal UX researcher or a customer development interviewer, and then the other to be CMO of a mid-sized healthcare company or whatever persona you're looking for. And it's pretty remarkable how much information these LLMs have. Again, just thinking of the pre-training, which is essentially absorbing as much of human knowledge on the internet, books, YouTube videos, other resources as possible. So there's quite a bit of context if you're able to mine it through tools like that. So that's something we do a lot to inform our product strategy, marketing, and just to get ideas for new products. And then of course we'll go and validate that with real user information. Operations, there's a platform, N8N. I don't know if anybody's heard of that. Okay, it sounds like, yeah, a number of folks. Super helpful as a pretty technical way to orchestrate through a GUI different workflows. Zapier's also got an interface like this. A lot of different companies are coming out, like Gumloop's another one that we've been experimenting with, but just a way to allow interfacing with all of the LLMs, different APIs you might use, again, in kind of a Zapier-esque way, but allow other parts of the team to build little workflows. I found this, though, to be really helpful, even for me, to, like one example of what I was working on yesterday a little bit was how can I write one piece of media, so YouTube script or LinkedIn blog post, and then have that basically translate, or one, to have a ton of help fleshing out those ideas kind of through the process I mentioned earlier, and then two, to basically format those into other types of posts. That way I can just speed up my own internal workflow of trying to share some of these ideas out in the public. And you can imagine there's a ton of different workflows internally that we're able to use these platforms for. One of the biggest themes that we keep coming up against as we've been building is the little bits of friction that might not seem like a big deal actually are a really big deal in terms of allowing us to get these models to go from just helping us with basically like what we would use being searched for in the past, but to go a lot further and to start to become actual agents that are working on our behalf, and then eventually like proactive asynchronous agents that are just doing work for us without us even asking. So we're kind of inching towards that. One example of lowering friction is I'll use something called Super Whisper. There's a few of these platforms, but it's a really amazing speech-to-text platform where I'm just dictating. I've got a hotkey, hold that down on my computer, and then I'll mention a bunch of what I'm looking for. It's got a local model that does an excellent job of translating that into text, and then it uses GPT 4.1 mini in my case, but you can have anything, and it knows where you're at. Are you in an IDE? Are you in a terminal shell? Are you in a Word document? And then it will kind of transform the text or like reinterpret what I'm saying and clean it up to make it more articulate, but fine-tuned for that environment. Just amazing how much that just feels incredible in terms of me being able to just speak and then know and like trust that that output is solid, or go in there and make a couple of quick edits. And again, if you think about that, voice can be, and at least for me, a really powerful way to interact and orchestrate and to control these models. So just thinking of all those bits of friction. Dario, the CEO of Anthropic, was just saying recently, Sonnet 3.5, you could kind of trust it to do about 10 minutes of work. Sonnet 3.7, you could trust it to do maybe 45 minutes of work. This is in like a software engineering context. And then Sonnet 4, and especially Opus, you can trust that to do maybe a couple hours worth of work. The friction points become, do they have the context I need for the project I'm working on, for a company, for me specifically, and then what's the friction and like how much do I have to interface with these models? For example, in the context of a code agent, so Claude Code or OpenAI's Codex or O3 Pro, any of these models that you might be using, in order to get them to run and to have that 45 minutes or a couple hours, you need to be able to give feedback. If you're working on a UI app, for example, using something like Microsoft's Playwright MCP, which I'm an absolute massive fan of, is a tool that these models can use to go and navigate around your browser, to take screenshots, to look at the network logs, console logs, to get all this context about what they're doing, designing these UI mocks to build out a great interface. If you give the model all of that context, it can just continue to iteratively, again, have that short feedback loop where you're not involved and come up with much more competent outputs than not having those tools. One kind of funny way I like to think about this, stealing this from Anthropic's CPO, who was also one of the co-founders of Instagram, but is this idea of closing your eyes for a couple seconds or like 30 seconds, and then just imagining that you're the LLM and you only have what the person just like prompted and like gave you. And there's not a whole lot you can typically do in that context, right? With just the prompt that like I'm writing to ChatGPT, for example. It's like, okay, well that's cool, man, but what does the UI mock look like? What's the context for like the business objectives for this quarter? What are the KPIs I need to adhere to and design to? What's your style guide? What's like what kind of stylistic preferences you have in the code base? Like what kind of open source packages can I use? It goes on and on and on in terms of the context that you need in order to execute on that task well. So I think having empathy for the LLMs and really putting yourself in their shoes, even through that thought exercise, it's remarkable how much that can help. And then, giving it tools as well.
Okay, let's talk about tools as the next step, because that's a big one. When you're going to feed this context, you have a business plan up there and templates for marketing. How are you what format are you storing this business plan in? I'm imagining I got my LLM up, and I'm typing, am I doing copy paste out of some Word document I had somewhere, and it's just a couple of sentences that we've all agreed on, and then, or how are you feeding the extra context? Because that seems really interesting and quite actionable for the work we do.
We're truly collectively on the cutting edge right now. I mean, there aren't good solutions for a lot of these things, and it's going to events like the AI Engineer World's Fair, talking to speakers, just obsessing over Anthropic especially, but OpenAI's API docs to try to glean, okay, what are the workflows at the internal?
Claude the system prompt for Claude came out a week or so ago. And there's a lot to learn from that.
Exactly. I mean, that's such an excellent example of, I'll answer your question, but just to take this quick detour, looking at what these teams, especially teams like the frontier labs, where the product is interfacing directly with the researchers that are doing the post-training and everything with the LLMs, because there's this awkward divide between how much can the raw model do, and then what should the product be on top of that. For example, the chatbot type interface or chat interface of OpenAI. So understanding from all that collaboration that's happening and just gleaming the way that things are phrased, or kind of like Claude Code that was used internally for I think 9 months before Anthropic released it almost 4 months ago, and just understanding the workflows and how do they envision agents is so interesting to study that and then apply that, because it's way bigger than just code agents, and it's way bigger than, in Claude Code's case, a CLI code agent. And Claude Code is basically Cursor, but in the CLI, in case anybody's not familiar. It's showing the path for how these agents will work and what kind of tooling Anthropic's exposing. So one example, just make my way back to your question, is they just came out again a couple days ago. All this stuff is happening so incredibly fast with a mode that you can double shift into, and what will happen is it's a planning mode. So you're basically able to work with the model. They came out with a checklist a month ago, because I was using different workflows before that. And then now you've got this iterative model where you can discuss, product requirements and have it do research and kind of iterate with it, come up with a plan, okay that, and then go back into coding mode. So these tools are slowly gaining some of this capability. But to answer your question, XML and Markdown files are easiest. XML because most of their training data on the pre-training side was ingesting just massive amounts of XML. So I'll use XML tags quite a bit to kind of help summarize. The models are getting so good now, though, that some of those tricks are a little bit less important. I still use it all the time, and I do think I get quite a bit more performance. And if you look at any of these,
it was just bullet points. XML is already formatted in the way the LLM was trained. So
exactly, and specifically just XML style tags, just to give context to breaking up the prompt.
I just wanted to continue off that question. Do you do each one of these steps manually, or do you have a pipeline for all of this? Yeah, just curious.
Well, so great question, and yeah, these are connected. Right now, some of these, there's a bit of a pipeline for, on the engineering side, using MCPs, which I can explain a little bit more in a second. But a lot of it, honestly, is, it's just changing so fast that I'll get a manual workflow working, and then I'll try to, through innate-in or a similar type process, or a script, which, of course, all these models are phenomenal at coming up with, Python or Bash scripts or whatever you're looking for. Or, in my case, using Notion as a data store, essentially, and that is interfacing with Markdown, or having a reference library of prompts and Markdown files that I can use. So yeah, it's a lot of kind of manually stitching things together and trying to automate it.
So how do you pass this down to your team then? Do you just kind of create a shared central data source for communicating, hey, these are the prompts I found that work really well, share them back with me, or do you have a better way of approaching that?
Great question. I'm literally thinking through this right now for this big workshop tomorrow. So it's a very pressing question. I would say to date, using Loom or any platform to quickly just hey, here's this new workflow I'm using, giving them a couple different Markdown files. So Markdown's my primary. I just have a context folder I'll throw in a repo. Then I'll put any context. So documentation, different a PRD, different workflows, instructions on how to use different things. I can explain that more in a sec, but just to finalize that question. And then for the team, I can like take that folder, and then with the Loom that explains all the context for how to go about using this workflow, I can communicate that to them. But I think a much better approach is 2 different areas that I'm thinking through right now. One is basically building out Notion documents in a way that these LLMs can query through them and have essentially the Markdown files all ready to go there. So a person can go in, edit what they need to edit, and then quickly reference that in ChatGPT or Claude or Cursor is a lot of what our team besides me uses to iterate through. One thing just to kind of mention, this is a really, really powerful tool that connects back to this, is MCPs. Is anybody here familiar or like have probably heard that buzzword flying around? I think it's the single most asked question I've seen on the internet the past couple months is, what is MCP? So Model Context Protocol is what that stands for. Basically, it's a standard that Anthropic led, but now OpenAI, Google, a lot of these other big platform providers are behind MCP. What I see it as so helpful for are 2 main things. One is MCPs are an incredible way to package up and give context to these LLMs for how to use tools. So what is a tool? In this case, I'm thinking of Notion. So an MCP, I can go in, I can copy a little bit of JSON, which I'm sure in the near future we'll have much more elegant solutions to this. As a side note, right now at the conference they talked about a registry of MCP registries. So there's so many different platforms listing out all the MCPs that there's literally a registry of all of those. That's how like messy the whole MCP environment is right now, because the spec came out in November and it's quickly getting adoption. But I'm imagining going into one of those, grabbing the Notion MCP, for example, and what is that? It's basically a wrapper on their API that gives the LLM a bunch of context as to, hey, here's how you can read documents, create documents, blah, blah, blah. Also, here are some additional resources or workflows that you can use. And there's a bunch of other advanced new parts of the spec, which I won't go into, that allow all kinds of cool, much more dynamic, stateful things to happen over just a raw API. But why that's cool is now I can go into ChatGPT or Cursor, ask it to use some name that I come up with for a workflow, and then it can just iteratively do that. So what's especially neat in the context of an enterprise, and I think more relevant to you all, is being able to encapsulate tool use, internal workflows, prompts, essentially the Markdown files I was mentioning earlier, all within an MCP. And you could create these very easily. And the models are excellent at taking in the documentation to create them. But then you have some standard workflow that you have for creating a PRD or interfacing with whatever. Again, I don't know your all tech stack, but workflow you have before you get to like a PRD to create a feature. So like Linear or Jira, for example, get all that context that's needed and then transform that into a standardized way that can then get fed to the models, or soon to be the agents to be built upon. So all this to say right now, it's Loom and giving people the source Markdown documents that I'm using. But in the future, and I think for you all to really think about, is what are the MCPs that we can use to encapsulate all that tool use and that process into one little easy to implement script that other people that are not technical can bring into Claude or ChatGPT or Cursor or Copilot. I'm sure if it's not already implemented, will soon, to be able to build those things out. So I think that's what I would recommend.
Do you find, thank you by the way, that's a good answer. My question's around the non-technical people. How do they feel about like adding the context through some Markdown file? And do they, how do you get them to shift the way they think of working?
We've almost died so many times. I mean, the last 2.5 years have been phenomenal with AI, but before that in our DNA is just this: we have to adopt new things and we have to move and use these tools. So that's just part of the cultural DNA. I would say though, what's amazing is giving people demos of how powerful these things are and how much time it saves them.
And Nate, is really good for showing people what's going on in a system in a visual way.
I think that's an excellent example. Being able to, it just looks neat. Also, you can like see your entire like day's workflow laid out, and then to see the outputs. And now that these LLMs are so good, again, I'm still just absolutely blown away by Opus 4 and Claude Code. Although, again, lots of great models besides like Anthropics. I don't mean to be championing one or the other, over the other here, but I think just the raw ability for these to produce and basically to augment your work is what's been the most helpful. Of, oh wow, instead of spending 3 hours doing this, I can spend 10 minutes, prompting with this chatbot or Chat GPT and using this MCP that Patrick just created for me. I'm able to get this incredible result. So I think it's at that level now to where that kind of drives adoption.
Thank you.
Yeah.
You mentioned different models. These models have kind of their own style for different things. Yeah, so
Yeah.
especially for this coding that I use them a lot for. I don't know if you experience that or you use that into your advantage, or any thought on that area?
Just to kind of detail that a tiny bit, Claude Sonnet 3.5 was a little lazy according to some people, and then 3.7 was way overeager. It would go and refactor a bunch of unit tests and do all kinds of adjacent things that you did not ask it for. Sonnet 4 and Opus 4 are much more steerable, and they can do all kinds of stuff, but they will really, really adhere to what your prompt is. The Claude Code team talked about when they were training and testing Sonnet 4 and Opus 4, there was actually a few regressions they noticed, but come to find out it was just part of their evals or the prompts they used to test the performance of the model. There were a couple like mistakes that the earlier models didn't realize, but that model did. So it actually was a good thing. The models were adhering to the examples. So to your point, the context, the prompting, the tool use, like all the things that you feed into it, it changes when these new models come out. So I think the best solution to that is having evals. Brain Trust is kind of the best platform currently for that, but it's ways to kind of denote like a unit test, like what are the prompts, and then what are the expected outputs based off of tools and like other information that you're giving it. So my answer would be having evals that are able to give you however many nines of predictability in terms of the outcomes, and then unfortunately for now at least us having to go in and tweak the prompts, the evals on a per model basis in order to account for those different levels of detail, eagerness, all these other metrics that a model has. So these are a few examples of different workflows that we use on the engineering and product side in order to speed things up. So I covered MCPs at length, but there's also external LLMs. Some of my favorite are Microsoft's own Playwright to use browser use. GitHub, I'll actually use the GHCLI tool. It's same functionality. It's just some of the models are actually better with that tool versus the GitHub MCP. Firecrawl to turn any website into Markdown, and a few of these other tools here. So playing around with some of these tools and just seeing what they're capable of is really helpful to gather ideas and to drive adoption.
Anything you want to say high level on GenAI UX?
You can think of it two ways. One is LLMs using your product or website or software, which is, of course, just barely starting, but it's going to happen more and more and more. The most obvious version of this right now is SEO dying in favor of like LLM SEO. There's a few terms for that, but it's not even like consolidated yet. As LLMs are using the software we build, reading our documentation, discovering our API endpoints, they're going to be making more and more of the purchase decisions. Right now, they're already aiding us in those purchase decisions if we're using ChatGPT, for example, to gather context for whatever we're trying to decide on, an open source library or an API or anything else. But in the future, I definitely see these agentic, end-to-end workflows where they're using whatever, Stripe or a cryptocurrency of some sort to actually make purchase decisions. So how do you make them discoverable? A lot of what we were talking about earlier with like Markdown files, how do you, instead of having a bunch of pages of docs with all this confusing CSS and images, again, if you're an LLM and you can see images, but you're not going to look at all of them because it takes up too much context, how can you just like have one giant MD file, or one standard that is coming out as an LLMs.txt file? That's basically a sitemap, but meant for the LLMs. It kind of is efficiently as possible give them all the context. That's a lot more easy to read. So yeah, which is, again, all these are really powerful frameworks. So that's one idea of GenAI UX. The other idea, though, is how do we design platforms for people using GenAI? There's a ton of different paradigms for this, but one example I'll just give, sprinkling intelligence throughout the app. In ChatGPT, one of my favorite examples of this is how it just automatically renames your chat with context about whatever you're talking about in a short distance. So there's a lot of cool UX paradigms that way.
Okay, great.
These are a couple examples of different things we've like vibe coded. I'll give you guys a 30-second rundown. This was a new slideshow that we'll use at large events. So imagine this being on a big projector or a screen somewhere. It needs to be highly performant. It was really fast to get from 0 to like 90%, as is typical with these. This was also a couple months ago, so the models are significantly better now, which I can explain. But what still took a lot of time was diving deep into WebGL, virtualization of the UI in order to basically, I can't just render like 10,000 images or videos, right? I'm going to crash any browser. So how do I handle the performance? At the time, using Sonnet 3.5 and 3.7, it just wasn't quite there, so I had to manually go in and do a bunch of that performance optimization myself. Still really fast though. It took, it was probably a fourth of the time that it would typically take. I think we got this out in about 3 or so weeks, maybe 4 weeks, with a bunch of testing and having to do a lot of research with just one engineer. One example though, this was 5 hours. Taking our API, our like an initial repo, and then also taking some documents and some written PRDs, and just being able to compile that super quickly into a working SaaS dashboard that had, again, integration with our API, authentication. It looks beautiful and works really well. One thing I'll mention here too is it was looking great, but I just asked it to use design principles from a couple companies I really admire, and then I had it use deep research to kind of distill and like compile like what that actually means, format that into a Markdown file, and then I took our like 15-page style guide that was the PDF, and I converted that into a Markdown file, just throwing it into an LLM and having it do that, and then I asked it to use all those principles to basically take our Tailwind and Shadcn based UI and to make that look much better. And it was shocking, the difference of just a ton of little like animations and like UI polish. Of course, I would sit with it and spend more time to kind of distill that down. But one point I wanted to make is for SEO, for UI UX design, for understanding a well-structured API interface to like your backend services, to think about off. One engineer being able to go and explore so many different domains that they're not experts in and quickly get like pretty incredible results. Think about, especially with this tech stack being Next.js and React and a bunch of like modern things, it's going out, it's finding all these incredible new open source projects, and it's coming back with an initial pull that's much better than what our internal team probably would come up with, and it's basically instant. Then of course, if you really get good at prompting and pulling from these modern like San Francisco, VC-backed startups, you can get just incredible results. Same thing with SEO, same thing with a lot of other areas. So any role, not just engineers, you can use these LLMs to go pretty deep horizontally, but the magic in my experience is the horizontal connection. Whether that's eliminating communication or allowing somebody to get just a much better, much more well-rounded end result by just even asking it to like improve the SEO. Of course, you want to be a lot more specific than that, but it's remarkable that what you can come up with. Okay, so lots of high-level ideas, lots of tactical experiences that I've given. These are, I try to just quickly kind of distill down what would be the next steps I'd recommend, or I literally am recommending to our team right now. The first is to just adapt AI in your workflows. I've mentioned this a number of different times, but the best way to understand what these models are capable of, their character, the way that these foundation model labs are working with their product teams to bring the intelligence and the capability of the models into reality, is by using them and understanding what they're capable of. Because it is pretty remarkable if you have a great model, if you give it context, if you use MCPs and other tools and give it access to that, if you give it tools specifically like within an IDE or a linter or static analysis, or again to take screenshots so that it can just iterate and have this feedback loop before needing to talk to you again, amazing things can come out of it. So yeah, trying the different models. I love the earlier comments about the nuances between the different Sonnet models. That kind of information is actually really helpful, or at least having somebody on the team that can speak to that. And then as especially using these agentic coding tools that are just coming out. Codex, Claude Code, Cursor, Agent is, again, new as of very recently, and then OpenHands is a really cool orchestration framework, along with Factory as well. And then I would encourage you all to just spend 30 minutes or even 5 minutes vibe coding a personal app using Bolt.new or Lovable or any of these kind of end-to-end frameworks, just to see what it's capable of. I helped run a hackathon at AI House recently, and it was really amazing to see what people were very surprised with, specifically with Bolt, in terms of what you can come up with. If you're an engineer, Claude Code with Opus 4, honestly, even if it's your own personal money, I would give it a shot, because it's pretty amazing what that model is capable of. And specifically, there's a few documents. There's a best practices with Claude Code article that Anthropic came out with 2 months ago, and then a Mastering Claude Code in 30 Minutes YouTube video with their recent launch when Opus and Sonnet 4 came out. Whether or not you use Anthropic's products, just that mindset and the way that they use these tools and the way that the tools are being built is super helpful to glean. So yeah, 30 minutes vibe coding or using a tool like Claude Code. And then your education stack is becoming so critical with things updating so fast and changing so quickly. For me, at least, with a small team, going into different parts of Seattle and getting in these founder groups where it's a bunch of technical, early stage, engineers essentially talking about the new tools that we're finding, or going down to San Francisco for the AI Engineer World's Fair. Honestly, talks like this, is a great way to go about it. And then having great podcast, YouTube channels to follow, articles. And again, just reading the documentation, as boring as that sounds, it's actually not. There's all kinds of nuance if you're really looking for it. That's super interesting on Anthropic and OpenAI's website. And I feel like they do a horrible job getting the word out that there's some great resources. I will say recently, I think it's been getting a little bit better on Anthropic's side. But yeah, so that's what I'd recommend. And I've got a list of specific recommendations I can go back to. And then from an organization perspective, I think empowering each person to build more of the stack, as I was mentioning earlier. So you might be shocked what one engineer from a UI, UX, SEO, marketing, copy. Of course, these models are also usually really great about copy. For my personal website, I just took my LinkedIn, converted it to Markdown, and then I had this other big application I filled out that kind of gave my whole story a little while ago. So I did that as well, and just amazing what it came out with with the first pull. Of course, I iterated with that and then manually rewrote stuff. But just to have the white page problem taken care of was phenomenal. So just seeing what you can build and exploring much wider than you're used to. The second thing is identifying the largest bottlenecks. So as I mentioned earlier, likely, I'm guessing, this goes to communication. And how do you get one idea and get through all the stakeholders and get back with everything checked off, ready to go, insight from all the different areas? How can you do that instead of having a ton of meetings and sending a PRD back and forth? How can you just come up with a vibe-coded POC or sit down and get an actual working MVP together with one person and then iterate from there? Or give the right amount of context into the LLM so that that initial MVP or POC is much, much closer to on target because you've taken the time to get the product engineering, customer comments, style guide, everything together. And then the last thing I'd mention here is, on that point, building the orchestration layer. Engineers in the future, and from my perspective and from the conference's perspective, is much more of an orchestrator. We're not in the IC mode that we used to always be in. We're taking a step back, even at a tiny startup, and we're orchestrating this sea of agents. I would not have said this until Opus 4 and Claude Code. I really do feel anywhere from 3 to, maybe up to 20, but 10x, more productive, because, and that sounds crazy, but you can imagine you collapse all these, areas of communication. If you have the tools, the context, the right models, you have these feedback loops so the agent can just go and go and go and go without having to come back and ask you, and then you seed it with the right with a very clearly laid out like a tech stack as to like where you want to go. With those elements, I mean, you can move really fast and ship things in a day or even like hours. So I think building that orchestration layer, building the ability to do that, and thus getting the speed that we're all going to need, unfortunately. I think one of the only moats moving forward, at least for now, that's persistent is the speed of execution, at least from what we're seeing, just because it's easier to make products. So that's meaning that we're needing to adapt and leverage these new tools and get these efficiency gains as much as possible. So having the orchestration layer is one of the best ways I can think of to speed that up and to allow that to happen.
Patrick, are you going to take this video and do something with AI on it to learn about your next presentation?
I will definitely transcribe this, and there's a lot of thoughts that take so long to kind of put together when you're sitting down at your computer writing. Honestly, just talking, and especially your guys' questions, is so helpful to see to kind of bring all those ideas together for context for articles or anything.
Yeah, I love it.
That's one of my favorite new workflows. It's same ideas, but just so much easier to take them out, and the questions really give so much depth. Because like where I maybe skipped over something quickly, now you've got that context embedded in the transcript as well.
You have mentioned a wide range of tools and models. How do you make sure the governance of those models, the privacy, the security of those all things for your product?
To be honest, this is probably one of the biggest differences between like our startup and like, it's like a lot of stuff. It's like, I don't, I mean, obviously user data we're super protective on, and like PII we take very seriously, but anything outside of that is kind of like, again, speed is the biggest moat that we see right now. I think sticking with the big, providers like OpenAI, Anthropic, I mean, it's a little hard because it's like, well, clearly OpenAI, ripped through, from my perspective, a ton of YouTube and like other sources. So I don't know how much, you can fully trust them, but in that case, if you go from like a $20 to $40 plan, I believe, for enterprise, then they've got a lot more guarantees. But yeah, we just roll with the, Anthropic and OpenAI, Grok, and a few other models, but avoiding, of course, like DeepSeek, or other models like that would probably be a good way to go. Or at least pulling one of the like, post-trained versions on Hugging Face that's got some of the that stuff outside of there, and then hosting it yourself could be helpful.
At some point you mentioned about validation for marketing specifically. You mentioned like we ask it to do this, all these tasks, and then we validate it. But you didn't repeat that for other other applications. What is your view on like validation in general? Is it practical, or is it something that is necessary to do? With this, like that you go fast in switching between models, how is it critical?
Your evals.
One of the like hacks that we're able to do is essentially like human in the loop. So for us, it's being able to kind of validate a lot of the output at our scale, at least, that comes out. Of course, if anything's built into the app, like our image processing pipeline, then that's obviously way above what we can manually do. So in those cases, having evals for there's amazing text-based evals or code-based, anything that a traditional LLM would use. Again, with like brain trust, and then some like image evals that we've created, for example, to just make sure that if somebody's got glasses, that's represented in their the image that's like presented. But beyond that, there's I'm laughing because last year, and like this was repeated this year, people will talk about just like feeling the vibes of these models and like outputs. So like honestly, again, in a startup context, that's a lot of what we're doing. But I think it's just taking the time to understand the character of the models, to create evals where we can, to safeguard and to make sure we're actually measuring the difference between new model updates and looking for regressions, that kind of stuff. Just like really paying attention to, okay, what's the 80-20 of the 20% of areas we really need to focus on.
I don't say it is possible even like to evaluate everything, because we don't know the answer. That like the user might ask a question and we are blind to their privacy, private data, and we don't know if our model works well or not. So those are the ambiguous part of development with AI.
One other note I'll just add on that is when you're orchestrating agentic workflows, I think there are a lot of patterns that you can borrow, whether you're using like OpenAI's Agents SDK or LangChain or any of these other platforms. to basically add validation steps and to kind of have like experts that are fine-tuned for specific outcomes. Like, fine-tuning even just one of OpenAI's models is not as hard as it seems. With like 100 pairs of data, you can get pretty far. But having like kind of defining these specific roles and then fine-tuning to that can really help get to a high level of 9s in terms of predictability for outcomes. So that's another tool I'd mention. I think though expectations around software I think are going to change to a certain degree or have already, where we're working with this more ephemeral, less predictable thing, or in terms of software versus like very cut and dry predictability. So I think it's going to become more acceptable in some cases. Yeah, yeah, absolutely.
Thank you so much for watching. If you found value in this video, odds are you'll also love this video I just released, encapsulating the framework and the playbook that I came back with from the AI Engineer World's Fair in San Francisco that just happened. It is by far my favorite conference for all things AI engineering. Also, make sure to like and subscribe to stay in the loop on future videos just like this. And please comment if you have any questions or ideas stemming from this video. Thanks.